The Odyssey tells you how the story ends before it begins. In the poem's very opening lines, the hero could not save his companions. Every single one of them died. And then, for the next 12,000 lines, the poem works very hard to make sure you don't hold that against him. Odysseus is the cleverest hero in Greek literature. Homer's Greek calls him Polymetes, Polytropos, the man of many wiles, many turns. And the text is completely explicit that his cunning gets every single one of his men killed. All of them, the whole crew, every ship. What's extraordinary is not that this happens. It's that Homer builds a narrative machine specifically designed to make you love the man before you are equipped to judge him. Over the next 15 minutes, this argument moves through a courtroom with no witnesses, a body nobody noticed was missing, and a question the poem has been asking since antiquity, without ever quite letting you answer it. None of this is history. The Odyssey is myth. Composed some 400 years after the war it claims to follow, by a tradition that never pretended to be reporting facts. That's not a weakness. It's what lets Homer build an argument this precise. Picture the first time the Odyssey shows you Odysseus. He is sitting on a beach, alone, weeping. He has been stranded on the island of Ogygia with the nymph Calypso for 7 years. He wants to go home. He is suffering. He is human, he is sympathetic, and every one of his men is already dead. That detail is important because you don't learn it here. The poem begins deliberately, structurally, after all the losses have already happened. The audience's first 4 books are the Telemachy. Odysseus's grieving son Telemachus searching for news of his absent father. His loyal wife Penelope waiting, weaving, unraveling. The whole machinery of mourning for a man who is not there. By the time Odysseus appears in Book 5, you have been conditioned to receive him as a beloved absence, a lost patriarch, a hero the world needs back. You are already on his side. This is not an accident. Irene de Jong's narratological work on the Odyssey demonstrates that the poem's non-linear structure, beginning in the middle, circling back through time, is not just an oral poetic convention. It is a purposive design. The Apologoi, books 9 through 12, are where the actual adventure narrative lives. The Cyclops, the Sirens, the Cattle of the Sun. The episodes most audiences think of as the Odyssey, and they arrive only after the sympathetic frame is fully constructed. Only after you already love him. But there's something else. The Apologoi are not narrated by Homer. They are narrated by Odysseus himself. He tells his own story to the Phaeacians, an aristocratic court who have the ships and the goodwill he needs to get home. This is not a private confession. It is a public rhetorical performance before an audience he must convince. John Peradotto, in his work on voice and identity in the Odyssey, makes the point with uncomfortable precision. Odysseus is the sole surviving narrator of events in which he is also the leader responsible for the outcome. There are no other witnesses. They are all dead. The only unreliable narrator available is the one who survived. And he needs this to go well. And then there is the proem, the opening lines. Homer tells us, before the story begins, before we have heard a single event, that Odysseus strove to save his companions but could not, and that the men perished through their own recklessness. Both things, simultaneously, in the same breath. He tried to save them, but it was their fault. Peradotto argues this double-voiced framing is itself an instance of Odyssean rhetoric. The poem has adopted the hero's own logic that clears himself of blame before the charges have even been heard. The audience internalizes his defense before they have encountered the evidence. Gregory Nagy reads it as a form of epic theodicy. The gods are on Odysseus's side, discussed approvingly in the Divine Council in Book 1, which casts every subsequent companion death as cosmically justified background noise. The structural argument of the poem is that Odysseus's survival is the telos, the goal, the endpoint. Everything was always building toward, which means every man who dies is not a consequence. He is an obstacle. That reframe is doing a lot of work, and it starts before the story has even properly begun. 10 years of war at Troy have just ended. Odysseus and his men want one thing: to go home. The first stop of the voyage is Ismarus. Odysseus and his men sack the city of the Cicones. It goes well. And then Odysseus orders them to leave immediately, before the survivors can regroup and counterattack. The men refuse. They stay on the beach. They feast. They drink through the night. By morning, the Cicones have returned with reinforcements, and the battle is catastrophic. 72 men dead. 6 from each of 12 ships. In his account to the Phaeacians, Odysseus is clear. He gave the right order. They disobeyed. The template is established here, and it will repeat. Odysseus gives the correct instruction. The men fail to follow it. The men die. It sounds like a story about insubordinate soldiers and a commander who bears no responsibility for what his insubordinate soldiers bring on themselves. But Charles Siegel, in his work on heroes and storytelling in the Odyssey, makes the point that this template is itself a narrative construction. The men cannot offer their own account. They are dead. We have no access to their reasoning, their fears, their perspective on the leader asking them to abandon a successful raid in the middle of celebrating it. We have only Odysseus, performing this story to an audience whose hospitality he requires, telling us that his men were reckless and that he was not. The Polyphemus episode sharpens this. Polyphemus is the Cyclops, a one-eyed giant whose cave becomes a trap. Odysseus's cunning genuinely saves the surviving men from that cave. The nobody trick, the sharpened stake, the escape under the rams' bellies. It is brilliant. And then, at the moment of escape, when they are on the ships and pulling away and the men are begging him to be quiet and leave, Odysseus shouts his real name back at the Cyclops. I am Odysseus, son of Laertes, from Ithaca. He cannot resist. And Polyphemus prays to his father Poseidon, and Poseidon hears, and that prayer is the engine of suffering for the rest of the voyage. The cunning that rescues becomes the cunning that condemns. Pietro Pucci's reading of the epithet Polytropos, man of many turns, many wiles, traces how the same quality that makes Odysseus the cleverest of heroes is structurally identical to the behavior that destroys his crew. It is not in tension with their deaths. It is the cause of them. The Aeolus episode makes this concrete. The god of winds gives Odysseus a bag containing all the adverse winds, leaving only a favorable breeze for the journey home. They are within sight of Ithaca. The men have been rowing for days, and Odysseus has not told them what is in the bag. They assume, reasonably, given everything, that it contains treasure he is hiding from them. They open it. Every wind in the world rushes out. They are blown all the way back to the beginning. Odysseus's secretiveness is not a side effect of his cunning. It is his cunning. He keeps information from his men because control of information is how he operates, how he survives, how he wins. But information asymmetry between a leader and his crew is not a leadership strategy. It is a structural guarantee of exactly this kind of catastrophe. The men did not open the bag out of greed or stupidity. They opened it because their leader had created an information vacuum, and they filled it the only way they could. The single largest loss of life in the entire poem comes shortly after, and it has nothing to do with anyone's cunning or recklessness at all. The Lestrygonians, giant cannibals, attack the fleet in harbor and destroy 11 of 12 ships. Hundreds of men killed in minutes. Odysseus's ship survives because it was moored outside the harbor, not because of strategy, not because of cleverness, because of where he happened to park. That is not a detail that appears in many retellings of this story, perhaps because it does not fit the shape of the legend. Elpenor is the youngest man on Odysseus's crew, the least distinguished. Homer tells us almost nothing about him except that he was not especially brave and not especially bright. He is, in every sense, the background of the poem. On Circe's island, he climbs to the roof of her palace, presumably drunk, and falls off. He breaks his neck. He dies alone, in the dark, and no one notices. Not Odysseus, not any of the other men. The crew musters to leave, and Elpenor is simply not there. No one counts heads. No one asks where he went. Odysseus discovers Elpenor is dead only when he reaches the entrance to the underworld, and the young man's shade, unburied, unattended, is waiting for him there. Jenny Strauss. Clay reads the Elpenor episode as a precise indictment of Odysseus's pastoral care, not of his strategic decisions or his cunning or his pride, but of his basic human duty to know where his people are. The most unremarkable man on the crew dies in the most unremarkable way possible, and the most celebrated leader in Greek literature does not notice. That is the point. The companions are not lost to divine wrath or impossible odds. The least of them is lost to a rooftop and a wine jar, and the absence of anyone looking. And then there is the final act. Thrinacia, the island of the sun god's cattle. Tiresias warns Odysseus in the underworld, "Do not touch the cattle of Helios," explicitly, clearly. Odysseus hears it. Circe warns him again when he returns to Aea. He hears that too. He makes his men swear an oath not to touch them, and then he falls asleep. The crew is stranded on the island for weeks by adverse winds. The provisions run out. Eurylochus, the most outspoken of the companions throughout the voyage, makes the argument that a glorious death is better than slow starvation, and the men slaughter the cattle. Zeus destroys the last ship. Every remaining man dies. Odysseus alone survives, drifting on wreckage. Clay's argument is that the sleep is the text's deliberate mechanism. Throughout the entire Apologoi, Odysseus's vigilance is his defining characteristic. He is the man who stays awake, who plans, who watches. And at the one moment in the voyage where supervision matters more than at any other, where he has been warned twice, by prophecy and by magic, that a specific catastrophe will unfold if he is not present and in control, he is unconscious on the beach. Formal innocence, total responsibility. His hands are clean. His failure is complete. The ancient world noticed this tension. Plutarch, writing centuries after Homer, flagged the contradiction between Odysseus's celebrated intelligence and his catastrophic outcomes. The scholiasts, the ancient commentators who annotated the text in the margins, argued about whether Homer intended the irony. R.B. Rutherford, in his commentary on the Odyssey, points out that the phrase, "through their own recklessness," atasthaliai, was a culturally available formula in archaic Greece, a way communities processed the mass deaths of ship crews and colonial expeditions without the full weight of moral accountability falling on whoever survived to give the account. Odysseus's language in the proem is not only self-serving, it is the language his audience already knew how to accept. The poem knows this. The poem is using this, and the poem is very good at it. We have moved from a man weeping on a beach, perfectly sympathetic and perfectly alone, to 72 bodies on the shore at Ismarus, to a young man lying with a broken neck on a roof while his crew sleeps below, to a leader asleep on a beach while the last of his men make the decision that ends them. The poem calls this a homecoming, a hero restored, a household made whole, and it is. By the end of the Odyssey, Odysseus is home, his enemies are dead, his wife recognizes him, and the gods are satisfied. The narrative delivers everything it promised. But somewhere between Calypso's shore and Ithaca's palace, 72 men died at Ismarus, hundreds more at the Laestrygonians' harbor. One young man fell off a roof unnoticed, and the last ship went down in open water with everyone aboard. The poem accounts for all of it. It never denies it. It simply arranges the telling so that by the time you hear the deaths, you have already decided whose story this is. Perhaps that is what epic does. Perhaps every story told from a single survivor's point of view is, structurally, a form of advocacy. Perhaps the question is not whether Odysseus was a great man or a catastrophic leader. Perhaps those are not opposites in the world the Odyssey is describing. But here is what the text does not resolve, and what no commentator from Plutarch to today has fully settled. If the poem knows it is constructing a defense, and it does know, if Homer builds the sympathy before the evidence, the narrator before the counter-testimony, the divine sanction before the moral audit, then who exactly is the Odyssey written to persuade? And of what? We've moved from a man weeping alone on Calypso's shore while his crew is already dead, to 72 bodies on a beach at Ismarus because no one would leave when ordered, to a young man no one noticed was gone until his ghost turned up at the edge of the underworld. Each image a different face of the same failure, arranged by the poem so you feel the grief before you're allowed to ask the question. There is a recognizable structure in how the Odyssey manages Odysseus's reputation that doesn't belong only to ancient epic. After major institutional failures, disasters at sea, in warfare, in systems of authority, the first account to reach the public tends to come from the person with the most invested in its framing. The survivor's report, the leader's testimony, the official inquiry, submitted by the people whose decisions the inquiry is investigating. The Apologoi are Odysseus's incident report, delivered to the only audience that matters, with no one left to file a dissenting account. What makes it literature rather than whitewash is that Homer appears to know exactly what he is doing, and embeds the critique inside the performance itself for anyone paying close enough attention. That's where we're leaving Odysseus. Home, alive, and still the only one telling the story. Next time, we go back further, the 10 years at Troy he's just walked away from, and the war that made him this way before he ever set sail. If this is the kind of history and mythology you want more of, subscribe. We're building both. A like helps more than you'd think, and if you've got thoughts, corrections, or something you'd rather we cover next, the comments are genuinely read. This is our first video in this exact form. Tell us if it worked.